Hello, my name is Maya Smith. Bon appetit, the importance of food. Food is symbolic of love when words are inadequate. Dr. Alan Wolfcott. This quote shows how amazing and powerful food can be, even in the hardest circumstances. My thesis is that food is one of the most important things in our daily lives that helps define us and shows who we are. I feel this way because even though some might feel that food is not that important and doesn't impact a lot of our lives, it does. And it is a very powerful and influential thing that some might not even see the importance or effects of. My roadmap today has three main parts and an additional informative foreword. Firstly, I'm going to explain how you can receive food and how your body gets senses and sees how it works. The next is the background of food and a person and how it affects them. Next, then I will explain the psychology and how the brain affects of what food does to us. And lastly, I'll talk about culture and how food's importance in culture. Firstly, I'll be talking about the groundwork of taste. There are five different aspects. Taste is derived from when food goes onto your tongue, and there are thousands of palpi called taste buds there. These taste buds have five different categories, as you can see from this picture. There's sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and then a fifth one called unami, which is the Japanese word that means the taste of fat. This is an important thing to know because the more or less of a certain scent a person has affects how much they want it. The way that the taste buds work is that the less of a certain scent you have, the more that you crave it. For instance, if I did not have a lot of salty taste buds, then I would eat a lot more salt and crave it more. And this is one of the ways that why we eat certain foods and why we like them. Now, the next thing I'll talk about is the psychology of food and how it affects us. First, I want everyone to raise your hand and say which circle you think is larger, on this plate or on this one. Actually, they're both the same size. This is one of the many ways that food can trick us in our psychology and how our brain works. One thing that is very important in how much you eat is the actual plate that you're eating it off of. The larger the plate, the more food the brain thinks it needs to be full. Additionally, if the plate and the food you're eating are the same color, your brain will also want to eat more. This is just one example of how the brain works in how much we eat and what we eat. Another thing that the psychology of the brain does is it helps to determine which foods we like and which foods we don't like. Psychology tells us, I'm sorry, psychology is important in food because the brain craves certain chemicals in order to feel happy. But the main reason we eat food is to gain nutrition from it, for our body to be healthy and happy. So there needs to be a certain balance in what foods you eat and how they affect you and what chemicals are in them in order to be the healthiest. For instance, your brain really might enjoy caffeine, but it does not have many nutritional values in it, and therefore it is kind of detrimental to your health to just eat caffeine, even though your brain would love that. An additional psycho factor that psychology plays into food is how you feel when you're eating something. This is also called the placebo effect that is seen in medical tests on doing of a new drug. The brain reacts certain ways if it thinks something is positive. For instance, if you eat cake and you're really happy and you're at your friend's birthday party and surrounded by happiness and love, then the cake won't have as negative as an effect as if you're eating it at 12 o'clock at night and feeling really guilty about it. Your body won't metabolize all the nutrition and the actual health factors from the cake if you're feeling negatively towards it. But if you have a positive outlook, then the cake will have more positive effects and not be as negative to your health. So, if you eat foods feeling positive, then you'll get the best benefits out of them, even if they're not the most scientifically healthy foods. Next, I will be talking about culture and how it affects food. Culture is the definition of culture is a certain set of traits, ideals, and thoughts that can be carried on generation to generation. Culture is something that is learned and you cannot be born with it. You it's a set of certain skills and knowledge that comes from other people who influence you. Culture throughout the world is very diverse and different depending on many aspects. For instance, these three pictures are from a New York Times article called A Week of Food Around the World. A photographer went all over the world and took pictures of a week of food in different countries. This first picture is of a family in Ecuador. Due to their low economic stance, they do not have as much food or a diverse amount of food. That's okay though, because as you can see from this picture, the family looks very happy and healthy and happy to be with one another. In their culture, food is one of the main things that brings people together and brings joy. Families gather around even though their meals may not be large and grandiose. They still enjoy every bite of it because they're together. This picture is of an American family and a week of their food. Now, this look might look a lot more familiar. They have pizza, a bunch of fast food, and processed food. Our culture tells us that food is something to eat and there's not much importance behind it. We tend to eat more things that are processed and less healthy because that's what's popular and that's what's available to us, even though it's not the most healthy. This final picture is in a family in Sudan. They are also have a low economic status and therefore eat different things. Another thing that makes this picture different than the others is the environment they're in. Africa does not this place in Africa does not have a lot of vegetables and fruits available because of its dry terrain. Therefore, they mainly eat a diet of grains and beans because that's what mainly grows in their area. The actual environment and geography of where you live strongly affects the foods that you eat there. Another instance of the geography affecting where you live is if you live in a seabound area, like Japan. People in Japan mainly eat a meals consisting of seafoods or other ocean derived things because that's where they get most of their food from because that's a large resource available to them. The foods that a culture is associated with often come from where they actually where they are and what's available in plentifulness to them. The next thing I'll talk about is the background of a person and how it affects what foods they eat. The background of a person is where they come from, what culture they are, what culture they're a part of, and how it affects their everyday lives. The background of a person can determine what foods they like and the importance that comes with it. For instance, if you come from a country like Italy and are used to the foods there, then making a recipe of spaghetti here in America would bring back certain memories and happiness that you can associate with your home, even if you're not there. The background of a person helps develop which foods are important to them and what reasons they enjoy them. Another thing the background has to do with what foods you like is that if you see somebody you are close to eating a certain kind of food, you'll have a higher likelihood of enjoying that food as well and trying it. Your background strongly affects what foods you eat and what they make you feel. Even though some might counter this with saying that eating foods or you can only make the food that you make is a result of where you are, and you can never recreate it in a different country or in a different location. Like like if you're making spaghetti here in America, you don't have the same spices, vegetables, or water that you do in Italy, and therefore the food will never taste the same and won't have the same con- contribution won't contribute the same effect as it does back home. But to counter this, I say that the food is beyond just the ingredients. It's how it makes you feel and what it does to you and what memories it brings. Even if it doesn't taste the exact same, there are still many important values that you can derive from the food and that makes you feel happy. Food is one of the things that can transcend a location and a position on earth, and it can still bring back home, even when it's miles and miles away. Culture is very important. Culture is very important when dealing with food because it's a set of standards that you get from a certain place. Culture cannot be replicated, but it can be spread. One powerful thing that culture can do is it can connect two people, especially from food. For instance, if you eat a food from a different culture that you had no idea about before, you can feel closer to that culture and it can bring people together, even if they don't have very much in common, besides their love of a certain food. Food is one of the most powerful and influential parts of life because it brings people together who otherwise would probably not know each other or get to know each other's history and background and connect. Connection over food is one of the most important and powerful parts that of it that makes it important in everyday life. For my community outreach project, which was it was part of my big board. The community outreach's goal is to help bring your idea into real life and help the people around you. My idea for this was to have a cultural awareness potluck. At this potluck, I invited many different people from all over Seahome, including the ESL students, the Diversity Club, and the and many others in Flex to come and share their culture and their foods with people they probably would not have known otherwise. Here are some pictures of the food we had. Now, just looking at this, you can see the different cultures and customs blending together in one table. There's mac and cheese, tabbouleh, roasted potatoes, and homemade bread from all different continents and all different countries of the world. But with this potluck, they were all brought together and everyone learned something new and tasted something new. This is a picture of us enjoying the food. And this is a picture of a girl that I had never talked to before, but made tabbouleh for my potluck and we became friends. This is a picture of all of us talking together at, at a table about our culture and where we came from. This experience was very powerful and very impactful to me. I had never realized how much diversity and culture was at Seahome through my 4 years before this experience. I talked to a girl who came from many different parts of the world. There was a girl from Portugal, a girl from Jordan, and they had emigrated to America and brought their culture and heritage with them. I thought that this was a very powerful and something that me or my friends would not have experienced outside of this potluck. The food brought us together and we learned a lot from each other and even created relationships and friendships that will hopefully last. My potluck may not have been the largest, but it's a starting point. By bringing people together over something that's hard not to enjoy, food, we can start to build bonds that would not have been there before and connect cultures and heritages together. One thing that food definitely that brings everyone together is the fact that you need food. No one can survive without food, and everybody is human, and food's one of the main things that brings us together. Food is one of the most important aspects of life, and I feel like through my presentation, I've shown the importance of food and how much it affects everyday life and how it can bring people together. Thank you.